actual separation didn't exactly happen as planned.
Okay.
So I found myself suddenly with two children, full time, all by myself. So the initial hit was quite harsh. There was a lot of, I was very anxious. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of like not knowing how I was going to tackle things, and a lot of shock too. So it was extremely difficult because while I was dealing with all these emotions on my own, I was also trying to hold the ship together and like hold my children's emotions together. My daughter at the time was 4 years old. So for her, it was very difficult to understand what was happening. Like she was not really processing it or understanding it in a way that was making sense for her. And all the while, I'm trying to process what's happening. So initially really felt like the ground opened up under my feet and just set off, like I think it was actually because of the way it happened, because it was so harsh and sudden in a sense, right? I realized that the way I had coped and dealt with challenges in my life before, which were many and many difficult moments in my life, I've had a very dark childhood, like a lot of loss and grief and depression and like a lot. Like I have a very difficult, I had a very difficult childhood, and like I lost my husband when I was 30. So like I had gone through a lot. But it was the first time in my life that I was dealing with something, that was that intense, but I also was responsible for other human beings other than myself. So I realized that I was not going to be able to do things the way I did them before. I was not going to be able to just let myself go and go to all the extremes that I would go before, right? I would just reach the bottom and then come back up, right? I had to really be there for my children. And I think that was really the moment that my whole a process that had already started of transformation. It had started like about a couple years before with, like just changing some of my habits and, like taking care of my body more and getting healthier physically. That had already set in motion something, really, really powerful for me. But when this happened, I realized that I really needed to completely change everything in my life, the way I saw things, the way I reacted to things. And, I think that whenever you're ready, the universe brings you what you're ready for. And it was in that moment that I actually got acquainted with hypnotherapy. I actually already had some experience with hypnotherapy. That's how I got myself to work out a couple of years before. So because I had that experience and I had seen how well it had worked out, I trusted this, thing that came, across my life. And I started doing some hypnotherapy, and I have to say, like, I literally felt that my brain, somebody took a vacuum cleaner and cleaned up my brain. That's the way it felt. And it was like a deeply transformative moment. And it literally set me off onto a completely different path where I started seeing things very differently. I started really shifting my perspective on life. I started even seeing all these challenges that I had all along until then as the thing that gave me an edge, as the thing that gave me the strength and the resilience to deal with something like that. All the while I'm dealing also with a divorce and lawyers and all this stuff. And then 6 months later, COVID hit. 6 months later, COVID hit. But in the meantime, right before COVID, I had this e-commerce business because I'm a fashion designer. I worked as a fashion designer for years. And I had this e-commerce, and I realized when December came around that I had a lot going on in my life, right? And I was no longer able to move, just be present in my business in the way that I needed to in order to grow it. I needed to start hiring people. Like my involvement was going to be more instead of less. And now I was also full-time single parent, and with all this stuff still kind of sorting out. So I realized that I was at a moment where I had to make a decision, and I decided to take a break from it to just sort out some of my personal stuff. And so I took a couple months break, and as I was coming out of this break, New York City went into a lockdown. And we all know what happened after that, right? We all know what happened after that. All of a sudden, I'm not just going through a divorce. I'm a single mom. My business is on hold. Now I'm a teacher. I'm a remote teacher, jumping from pre-K to second grade, pre-K to second grade. And that was a very, very difficult moment as well. So, I learned a lot. And at the same time, that was also the moment that I realized, that what I was doing to help myself, all of the self-development, the inner work, the inner child work that I was doing was really helping me deal with kind of an impossible situation by myself with no help. I have no family in the city. And I realized, I had a friend that's an NLP coach. She was nudging me for a while because we talked a lot and we had a lot in common. She was like, you can really be a coach. And so she planted the seed. And eventually I let go of my identity as a designer. And I was like, you know what, let me try this thing on. Let me try this coaching thing on. And I started coaching. And I realized that I had the ability to really help people through my own experience, through my own challenges, through what I was going through, right? And that because I had gone through so much, everything that I had already gone through and figured out was really, really powerful in helping. That knowledge was really powerful in helping others. And that's how I kind of got started on this coaching journey, which has been incredible, an incredible journey. I feel so connected to it. I feel so fulfilled. It's deeply rewarding to me to be able to help others go through life in a way that's not as scary or heavy and difficult, and it feels like you have no control. Because frankly, I feel like when I was still married, I really felt disconnected from my life. I really felt disconnected from my children even. I felt like a little bit numb and not clear on where I was headed, what I wanted to do. I wasn't really passionate about anything. I was thinking about going back to fashion, but I didn't really love the industry. And, as I did all this work, all of that stuff, that is part of doing the work. Right? Part of doing the work is to really clarify who you are and what you want, what your values are today, right? Because sometimes we do that, and we've done that when we're like 12 or 15. We made a decision, and then we put all this work into going and getting a degree, when we get older, and then we get really attached to that. And we don't ever stop and check back in. Is this still something that I want? Does this still fit me, right? And when I did all that work, I realized, what I love about design is the creative aspect of it. There's so much that doesn't align with me otherwise. Whereas when I started coaching, all of that kind of fell into place, and it was in true alignment. And I realized that there's a lot of creativity in this work too, right? There's a lot of creativity in coaching. I mean, I know that's a hard thing to maybe understand sometimes, but coaching is very brainy, mental, but you'll also get creative with it, right? In figuring it out. So, and there's a lot of creativity in terms of, creating content, and, there's places to be creative. And so that also shifted for me, right? The rigidity in seeing creativity only one way, right? It has to be this way for me, right? And really allowing that flexibility to come in, and realizing that you can find creativity in anything that you do. And I would say that that's kind of the same in life for many things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you can have fun. I remember I used to think like I felt really like trapped. I felt like my freedom was taken away because now I have two kids and I'm by myself, and then we were stuck inside for so long. And then I realized, like I'm someone who likes to have fun, who likes to enjoy life. Well, what are some ways that I can do that with my kids? Right? What are some ways that I can create that same thing within the situation that I'm in? And I have to say that during the pandemic, I really like created a lot of different strategies for myself to, I'm gonna say, survive it, because it really felt like I was surviving some days. And a lot of the strategies are strategies that I now use with my clients, and they're super effective. They made me a very, very effective, efficient person. And I found ways within the chaos and within this madness that was happening on the outside to find places of fulfillment and peace, and, just show up for myself, carve time for myself. Right. And really always reminding myself it's not forever, it's temporary. Everything eventually ends. But while I'm in it, what can I do to make this better? And I would say that that's something that everyone and anyone should always ask themselves, even if you're not a mom, right? But if you're a mom and you're a single mom, it is really not useful. And this was my old default mode, right? It is not really useful to focus on all the things that are not in the way that you would like them to be, because that just rehearses that scenario. It just actually makes it stronger, right? It just continues to create that reality for you because you're so focused on it. Yeah. And it's important to acknowledge it. It's important to say that, because I'm not saying that it wasn't hard. It was really hard. It was really difficult. There were days that I had a tantrum, and I had to go apologize to my kids afterwards. My kids were seeing this therapist over Zoom. I mean, so much happened for these two kids, like the separation, the divorce, and he and I were not in good terms. So that was really hard too. And then they're no longer in school. They can't see their friends. And now they're in front of a screen. I mean, you have children. It's a lot of adjustment for that. So it was, now I kind of lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Mom brain. See, I still have that and I embrace it. That's part of it. That's part of being moms. But yeah, like during COVID, during that very difficult, oh yeah, then my kids were seeing a therapist. And I remember, one day, one of the things that was really hard for me was I would feel like I'm traumatizing my kids. I didn't do this right, or like, how am I ever gonna compensate for what they're missing? Their dad is not around. Yeah. So there was a lot of like focusing on all the things that I didn't like, right? And really feeling bad about myself, and really feeling like I was falling short, and feeling exhausted at the same time, feeling like, I mean, mommy brain was like a good brain at that point, right? I feel like I had no brain anymore. At some point, I'm all of a sudden, I'm like teaching my kids all this stuff I grew up in Italy. That's where I went to school. My son would come to me with this math stuff. I'm like, well, I know how to do it my way. Right. Is that okay? So, I was going through a lot personally too, and there was no time for me because we were together 24/7. And I remember her saying two things to me. She was like, always remember that if you don't take care of yourself, then no one's there to take care of your children. So always remember that oxygen mask, right? I'm sure we've all heard that, right? If you're not in a good place, then you're not going to be able to show up for them. And secondly, we're all going to fall short, right? Just sitting in guilt is not helping you or your children. But always, always remember, you can go back and repair. If it's okay to actually make mistakes, and then go back and repair it, because you're showing your children that you're human, that you too make mistakes. You're teaching them that if they make mistakes, it's not the end of the world. When you make a mistake, you recognize it and you go and you repair, you apologize, you explain yourself, you have a dialogue about it. And so she was like, okay, you had a tantrum in front of your kids. I'm like, no, it was really bad. It was really, really bad. I was kicking stuff. And she's like, repair, repair, repair. It's already done, right?
Right.
Already done. Repair, repair, repair. So yeah, I had my low moments. I don't think I'm a model mom, but I actually do think that I'm a model mom, because to me today, the way I see things, being a model mom is also about allowing yourself to not be perfect, allowing yourself to make the mistakes, right? Especially with the first children, right? I'm a first child, and like, yeah, we're the guinea pigs, right? We are, right? You make all your first mistakes with your first child. You're learning as you go. It's a job that you were thrown into. No one taught you how to do it. And to expect from ourselves to do it perfectly right away, it's setting ourselves up for failure, right? It's a trap that is not possible, because we learn through making mistakes and redirecting, right? The things that we call failure, I now really train my clients to call them redirection, feedback. It's just feedback. It's not failure. You wouldn't know how to do it the right way or a better way if you didn't know what not to do. So knowing what not to do is also important.
Yeah,
So,
like Thomas Edison, before he created the light bulb, he figured out 1,000 ways how he couldn't do it.
exactly, right? But we forget that part. We forget that part because we're always there. We're always like at the outcome. We want to be at the outcome. But guess what? There was a whole journey getting there. And you can either sit in the journey and like whip yourself because you're not there yet and feel terrible about yourself, or you can go through the journey dancing and embracing it. And really, really seeing the value in all that you're learning along the way. And that is something that is not taught to us. We're not used to thinking that way. Seems impossible to start, being able to start thinking that way. And guess what? You can rewire your brain to do anything you want it to do, as long as you do it long enough and over time, right? Consistently over time. So anytime that I feel like I cannot do something, I always remind myself, well, first of all, I break it down to the smallest step possible. I'm just stick to that, silly step. It's a silly step, but that silly step is one little success that's going to stack up on top of all the other successes you're going to collect. It's going to bring you to that change of, mindset or shift in your life, right? So that is something that I always bring myself back to as well, right? When something feels really hard, it is not useful to you to think about the big thing you're trying to tackle, the big situation that's not the way you want it to be. It's much more useful, and I use this purposely to trick your brain to think that you're succeeding all the time, right? I don't care how small the step is, as long as you achieve that step. But it's up to you to set what that step is, right? So, but we often just set ourselves with these really big steps, and it's like, I didn't get it done. It's like, well, you're trying to write like 5 books and you never wrote a book. I mean, right? Why don't you start with one paragraph, one sentence, right?
One letter.
One letter. Literally, there's a book by James Clear. I'm sure everyone knows this book now, Atomic Habits. It talks about going to the gym. Start by laying out your clothes. Don't even have to put them on. The day after, you try to put them on, right? So that really is how I manage all of this. And even with being kind with myself, when the expectation I had of what I was going to accomplish or do didn't quite pan out the way I wanted it to, that's okay. What did I get done? What part of this did work out? Right. And it's actually fascinating and amazing when you do that, how things tend to just start working out on their own.
Because what you focus on expands. So if you focus your attention on the things that are working, you will suddenly find more things that are working.
100%. The reticular activating system brings the 400 billion bits of information a second down to 2,000 bits of information a second. So I'm just saying, we're not going to expand on that right now, but like our view of the world, our perception of the world is a very limited, condensed view of the world. So if you do a little math from 400 billion bits of information to 2,000, there's a lot of stuff that we're not seeing that's out there, right? So we're focusing on all the things that are not serving us, that are making us feel disempowered. That's the only information that gets filtered through. So yeah, it's really real because you're focusing on it.
Yeah.
But the same is true, if you choose to focus on something that is empowering.
Yes. If you had an opportunity to go back in the past, what kind of advice would you give to your younger self?
How far in the past?
When I called, when you were 18 or 19.
So I would say, let's say, because I I see every experience that I had as crucial to who I am today, right? It had to happen the way it happened. There's no regrets. But what would I teach my daughter would be to really, really clarify to herself what her values are, what aligns with her, what feels right to her. Not because I said so, not because the expectation is that, not because of society. What is it that you really want? And when you meet someone, make sure that you have that conversation, make sure that you compare, right? Especially when you decide to have children, because I think when I had children, the clock was ticking and I had to do it, right? And I think that there was a part of me that wasn't sure that I didn't even put the thought behind it. Like, are we a match? How is this going to work for us as parents, right? So I would say really check in with your values. Make sure that you even know what your values are and make sure that they match the person that you're going to decide to spend your life with or you decide to have children with. Because that's really important. That's really a make it or break it type of scenario, right? If your values don't match in terms of how you see parenthood, it's a problem when you have kids, right?
Yeah.
If you don't want to have kids, then just make sure that everything else that you would like to do in your life matches, right? If you even ever have spent any time thinking about that, right? I kind of always, things fell in my life and I kind of went with the flow, right? But I never really like sat down and intentionally thought about who am I, what really aligns with me, how do I feel expressed and fulfilled, what are my values, right? Because we're not taught to put attention onto that. We're taught to do the things that we are meant to do, expected to do, what is the right degree to take, that's the most prestigious path, or like we kind of like, we're conditioned, we make decisions based on conditioning and we're not even aware of it. I thought I was such a rebel, right? I thought I was always just doing whatever I chose to do. But truthfully, now that I know so much about the brain, 95% of what we do is a program that's running in the background that we're unaware of, right?
Yes.
So get aware of that 95%. It's important, right? If you're 100% and you're only conscious of 5% of your decisions, of all the things that you consciously do, the 95% needs your attention sometimes. And you can it's still going to go back to your, in the background, but you have now chosen what's going to go in the background, right? What are the thoughts and beliefs that you want to have, right? It becomes a choice rather than something that was inherited or that you believed when you were 5 years old, right? I always say we're adults with the emotional maturity of a 5-year-old.
Yeah. We have these bodies, grown-up bodies and responsibilities, but inside I
we're
feel like
running,
I'm a kid.
yeah, we're
When
running.
I look at my kids, it's like, okay.
Yeah, 100%. And we're unaware of it. So we get all mad, when people react to it. It's like, yeah, you're acting like a child. And that saying is actually probably very true, right? Yeah, we are acting like we're running the childhood program.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of advice would you give to single parents who are just stepping onto that journey of single parenthood?
Thank you, therapist. The advice that I would give is make sure that thing called self-care that you are most likely writing off as being selfish, as I don't have time for. Guess what? It's a 95% program that's telling you that that's selfish. That is actually the number one thing, the most important thing that you could do, not just for yourself, but for your children too. Make sure that you are in a good place. Make sure that you make time for you. You create a healthy environment for yourself, not just mentally, also physically. I can't even tell you how many times I skipped meals, when I don't have time, or like didn't take care of myself, because how you feel in your body, how you feel about yourself is greatly affects how you're going to show up in life. So make sure that you take care of you, and make sure that if the guilt comes in and you believe that you're being selfish, that you rewire that thought, that you really remind yourself that you're doing this for your children as well. So that's number one. Number two, just stay present. Stay present. Look at the big picture, create a plan, break it down, and stick to the small steps, because it is very overwhelming. I'm not going to lie, right? I'm not here to just bypass it. I'm still going through it. It is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. And at the same time, I'm doing it. My kids are thriving, right? Did not feel that way on day one, let me tell you. Did not feel that way on day one. So if you're on day one, or if you're contemplating it, it's going to feel really overwhelming. And the only way to change that is by really looking at things on a smaller scale, and then day by day by day, hour by hour if you need to. And surround yourself with people that are supportive. Surround yourself with things that you love. Surround yourself with alignment. And always go back to love. I always go back to love. Even I had moments where I felt like I really truly don't know how to tackle, whether it was a conversation, or my daughter having a really strong reaction, or my son going through a really rough patch. And I would always, in the moment, right? Because I think the challenge is in the moment. It's like, in this moment, I don't know how to respond. It's okay to say, hey, you know what? I really don't know what to say right now. But what I do know is that I love you, that I'm here for you. We're going to do this together. You're supported. And it's okay to take time to go figure it out. You don't have to fix things, but you can be there for them. You can be there for yourself, because when you're there for yourself, guess what? You're modeling that for your children, right? You're modeling for them that being there for ourselves, therefore being there for themselves, it's an important thing, right? Because ultimately the aim is for all of us to be autonomous in that, right? To give that to ourselves. For as long as you depend on something outside of you giving you that, a partner, a husband, a friend, you bump into disappointment. No one's ever going to meet all your expectations, but you can meet your own expectations, because you're you, right? You know exactly what you want and what you need. And rather than going and teaching these concepts to your kids, if you're young, it's not an easy thing for them to, you just model it. And that's the other thing that I learned. You just model it. When you make a mistake, or when you show up and you just yelled at your kids and you lost it, and then you go and repair, you show your children that it's okay to lose it, and that the right thing to do now is to go and repair it, right? So I always see it as an opportunity to learn and teach, right? It's an opportunity to learn and teach. Even when I make mistakes, Instead of sitting, the mistake is already done, right? So sitting there in guilt and beating myself up is just putting me down, right? But when I make a mistake, if I see it as what an opportunity for me to show my children how to tackle this situation when they are going to inevitably make a mistake or lose it or not be at their best. Now they know how to go about it. Now they know what to do in a healthy way. So always see it as an opportunity to learn for yourself and an opportunity for your children to learn. I think we often, one of the things that I would get really stuck on was like, I traumatized them for life, that's it, there now they're going to be traumatized. No, because what the trauma stays there. All this trauma that we have collected, in our beautiful bodies and emotions, stays there because it's unprocessed, right? So when you teach your children how to process it, it's done, it's gone, right? They're not traumatized for life because you help them process it. Trauma can be processed. So just teach them how to go about it. Just teach them what is an empowered way to show up when we're not showing up at our best. I know it was a very long answer. There's so much advice that I could give, right? But truthfully, it's really about you. Who do you want to be? What kind of mother do you want to be? How do you want to show up? And what do you want to create for yourself? Right? Because that's also modeling too. You're not just a mom, you're a person with desires, with ambition, right? With the need to be loved and fulfilled. Honor that, honor yourself.
Yeah, I do. I love the points, and I do see kind of this is a very important, and it's the self-care and how we usually are brought up. I think self-care is so important, and oftentimes we are, at least the way I was growing up, like once you have kids, you gotta forget about yourself, and this is not the case because this is the kind of vibe you're giving out. You cannot give to your kids what you don't have yourself. So if you don't love yourself, if you didn't spend time taking care of yourself, what kind of person do they see? And the people around you, who do they see? So important. And being present in the now, I think, is so important as well. Savoring and slowing down the moment, because oftentimes we go through life always rushing, always ticking boxes off, and never actually being present.
So true. You're making such a good point. So true. I mean, I think that is one of the things that has really shifted for me. Like, setting some boundaries around myself too. When I spend time with my kids, it's like our playtime. I'm 100% with them and like really being present with them. 10 minutes of that is worth everything to them. You don't need to do it for a whole day. No one can be just present a whole day. Like, oh, my beautiful child, how much I love you. You can't do that for a whole day. I get it. But to really, really be, like, stick to those boundaries. Stick to those boundaries because again, whatever you do, you're modeling for your children. When you're modeling self-care, they are going to take care of themselves, right? They're learning that taking care of themselves is important, right? And that's worth so much more than many words and nagging and telling them what to do.
Yeah. Are there any fun projects you're working on right now that you would like to share?
I am. So I have this YouTube channel, and we're about to rebranding it and relaunching it with a new name. I will give you the new name, even though no one has the new name yet. It's currently called Wednesday Wellness Show, but it will be rebranded as An Honest Look. And it's going to be a podcast too. So I'm very excited about that. It's going from YouTube channel to podcast. So that's something I'm working on. I'm working on many different things, but and then I'm also working actually on in-person events that are going to be eventually retreats. So I'm going to be doing like healing journeys and just like a experience, like a one evening experience to start, but then they're going to be like a couple day retreat. So that's something really fun I'm working on. For now, it's just really fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
If people would like to find you, connect with you, where would they go?
I mean, they can go on Instagram, they can go on Facebook, they can go on my YouTube channel if they want to listen to, my work. That's a really great place because we talk about all of these things. If you don't know how to set boundaries, go through the channel, like setting boundaries, or like what are boundaries, or like you're stuck. Like there's episodes that we've done around all the different challenges that we see in our like profession through working with clients that people typically struggle with. And so we create episodes and conversations around that. So if there's anything that you are looking to tackle, just go through it. You'll probably find the answers in one of the episodes. Yeah, I mean, I'm not like, I'm on LinkedIn as well. I'm everywhere, but I'm also not seeing those as I need to be there every day. I put there things that are relevant to me when I have time. I'm really dedicated to helping people tangibly, like through their lives. So that's very much where my focus is. But you never know. I may become a huge Instagram influencer at some point. Not on my plan currently, but yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you so much.
You're
It was a
welcome.
pleasure to have you.
So welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.